right, if the meeting would please come to order. We're going to move on quickly. We got a heavy agenda. Okay, yeah. And we want to get started as quickly as we can. So if everybody come in and take a seat and get yourselves all. There's no assigned seats this time. You know, no placards. Sit anywhere you want to. It's not by seniority or anything else. We've done testing, and it's going to be by ability grouping. So y'all I want to switch seats. That's right. Margaret, let me have your seat because I am in trouble. Come on up here. All right. I did not go to a charter school. I need some help. All right. No. I didn't say that. I don't believe I said that. I don't believe I said that. All right. Would you all please join me? I think I need to do this. I think we're going to have a word of prayer. So if y'all would please join us, please, in a word of prayer. Most gracious Heavenly Father, just how thankful we are that all of us can come together in this great capital, this great city, this great state, to deliberate, to think, to argue, to talk, and just to do what's best for the boys and girls of this great state. We ask that you give us, please, cool minds and a warm heart to help us do and say the right things that will always be the best for our boys and girls. Dear God, we thank for everybody who here's here in the audience that will help us out. We appreciate their cooperation, their support. Be with us now, guide and direct us. We ask these things always in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. If members of the committee, if you would, I want to remind you all, and I need to do it first of all, everybody here, please take your cell phones and let's mute them. Remember, we are being recorded. This is out on the internet. So, and if anyone wants to talk to anyone on the committee or have a message, please raise your hand and go up here, and one of our aides will be glad to come down and get your message and bring it to the members of the committee. Before we start, I want to just ask the committee members just to refresh everybody's mind, and because we have a few new people, I'd like for us just to start to my right. Tommy, if you would, introduce yourselves. And Tommy, congratulations. You're chairing about 4 new committees now, I think. I'm proud of you. I'm not going to turn on your mics because it's going to be hard to keep up with it, but if you'll just speak out loud and introduce yourselves.
House District 103, Gwinnett.
Bruce Coleman, and it's District 97, Gwinnett, Duluth, and Swanee.
Willie Townsend, 145, 111 Street.
Wayne Howard, House District 121, Augusta, Richmond County.
Brian Thomas, District 100, Gwinnett.
Mike Dudgeon, District 24, Forsyth County.
Randy Nix, House District 69, which is part for Troop Herd in Carroll County.
You in trouble. Great. And we have some new staff members. I'm excited. I love my other one, but I'm going to tell you I've got a great, I don't want to say replacement, but someone's coming in there to take over and just continue the great work. Courtney, introduce your staff, and we let the whole table introduce themselves up there. Now, Courtney will be there, so if anybody, y'all go by to meet her, and she'll be glad to work with you and help you. And don't tell her these stories that some of you have already told her, the privileges you have in my office. I don't know. Abby?
Abby Wicker, used to be chaplain. I got married this summer. So.
All right.
Yes, so happy to help if you guys need any research or anything like that.
Congratulations, Abby. Got married. All right, all right. Betsy, if you would now.
Betsy Howerton. I'm with Legislative Council, and also wanted to introduce, we have a new attorney in our office, Jeremy Airy, and he's going to be sitting in today.
Great. And as I told Jeremy earlier, he's training with probably the greatest legislative person that we have in this cabinet. We're glad Betsy's back with us. We appreciate that. What I'd like to do now, we've met most of you. We won't go around and introduce everybody, but is there anybody out there that you're new this time? You're new here. You're new lobbying. You're new. Your association. You stand up where we can meet you. All right, stand up. All right. Hey, you're gonna have some tough shoes to fill. All right. Great. Coming on around, anyone else back there on this left side? Stand up and tell us who you are. Very good. Are you going to be down here with us all the time, Sally? Is anyone with you? Where are you, Tracy? Let us see you. You're new. I know you've been here, but hey, we're glad to have you. All right. Come on around. Anybody in this middle section? Anyone want? Yes. Wonderful. Yeah, we're glad to have you here. He's over here now trying to learn from all of us. He's over there in Germany. He said he's going to take everything he learns from the education committee back and straighten the German education system out. I'm proud of you. All right, all right. All right. Was there someone else back there that's new with us this time? Stand up. All right. Coming on around to my right. Anybody over here in the right section? Stand up. Yeah. Very good. Anyone else? Got one here? Where? Yes, sir. Very good. Glad to have you with us. All right. Yeah, I want to introduce her. And now I want to introduce a very special intern. So stand up and, hey, I tell you what, she is going to be a good one. She's trying to, so I intern, please stand up.
Thank you. I'm Kimia Saleh, and I'm interning at House Education.
In your Georgia State, is that correct? We're getting your PhD degree, huh? She's going to be great. And Ed, you just came in. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Edward Lindsay. I represent House District 54, which is North Atlanta.
And Ann?
Representative Ann Purcell. I represent House District 159, which is Cabot County and Effingham.
Well, we're glad. Anybody else feel like you need to say anything before we get started? All right. If you look in your folders, I want to thank Abby and Courtney, whoever put this together. I love this picture profile of everyone on our committee. This is great. Well, I'll know who we are and who you are, and so this is good. You also have in there, hopefully your agenda and the 3 bills we'll be talking about today. And if you don't have anything, just raise your hand, and Courtney will see you get the information. Before we start now, I'd like to ask David Cassis if he would. We've had several bills introduced to the committee to make some assignments to subcommittees. So, David, what's yours?
Right, if you're taking notes, House Bill 659 by Representative Wilkinson. This bill revises provisions relating to reckless conduct, focusing on hazing. That bill is being assigned to academic support. Academic support.
And who is that chaired by?
Representative Nix.
Nix, all right.
House Bill 661 by Representative Hurd. This requires that professional personnel in charter schools comply with the same certification requirements as professional personnel in public schools in the state. That one will be assigned to academic achievement. Academic achievement. House Bill 662 by Representative Manning. This bill is meant to enact the Blind Persons Braille Literacy Rights and Education Act. This bill will be assigned to academic achievement. Academic achievement. House Bill 689 by Representative Billy Horn. This bill relates to state employees' health insurance plan. This bill is being assigned to academic support. Academic support. And finally, House Resolution 1093. 1093 by Representative Marin, which urges local boards of education to apply for federal funding to retrofit school buses with pollution control devices. This is going to be assigned to Representative Nix and the Academic Support Subcommittee, Academic Support. And that is the bills, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, if you look in your folder, you'll see an information sheet, House Education Committee information sheet. Before you leave today, if you would, please complete this. Down there where it says where you can reach 24/7, please give me a number that I can reach you if I need you, so that'll be important, especially on down the road. And so give this to us and let Courtney have that before you leave today, or leave it in your folders and we'll pick it up. I appreciate that. And to our friends in the audience, we know you just died to do this, so like to ask you if there any one of you or any group that would like to support. We decide, when our committee, we do things a little differently. We like to have maybe committee luncheons or something. So if you'd like to provide us with a committee luncheon one day, if you would just let Courtney know. She'll be glad to put 2 or 3 of you on the list, and we'd like to come up after the session many times and have lunch. And if one of you just dying to take us out one night, we may even consider that. So just see Courtney, and she'll be glad to take those names. And now, with anybody have any questions or anything they want to see on the committee? You know, our vice chair is Representative Casas. Our secretary, right down there, raise your hand, Representative Benton, is our secretary. And so they will be, when we have the bills, they will be getting information to you so that we can give it to our Mr. Chairman, our whip over here, where we can get the information to them. And we're glad, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, we're glad to have a member of our committee coming in, the Speaker Pro Tem, Representative Jan Jones. Jan, want to say hey to the crowd? We're glad to have her in with us today, too. All right, without any further delay, we have 3 pieces of legislation we're going to be considering today that are, as I think everybody in the room knows this, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. We've been working since the last session on House Bill 192. And as you all know, this was a piece of legislation that authorized the creation of a Education Finance Study Commission to look at the funding of education in the state of Georgia. What was so unique about it and so beautiful about it is something never been done before. It was legislatively done instead of just appointments by the governor. And this bill required appointments from the House, appointments from the Senate, and appointments by the governor. It also said what positions would be appointed. It said it would be chaired by the chair of the House Education Committee, co-chaired, and of the Senate. And so we've been meeting, as most of you know, since, what I think, Christine, how long? We've been meeting since April. And they weren't here earlier, but I am so glad to have Christine, her staff, and James, all of y'all here that have worked so hard with us. We appreciate that. And we are been working. We divided the committee into 4 subcommittees to do the heavy lifting, and they have had over 25 meetings during the interim, and they have involved, I was looking the other day, over 100+ people on these subcommittees, principals, teachers, parents, businessmen, to help us look at various parts of this education funding formula. We've looked at things like support services, the financing formula, the QB weights. We've looked at equalization. We're looking at capital outlay. We've even looked at all the curriculum components in the State Department. And as the law specified, we had to prepare for the governor before budget time some recommendations of, we called it this year, the low-hanging fruit. And that's the things that we felt we needed to go ahead and start doing so that next year we can come in with the heavy lifting and complete the study and the funding formula. So at this time, based on that, we came up with 6 and possibly 7 pieces of legislation to do what we had to do. And I'm going to tell you, I was tickled to death. I know Jan came up and saw me after. I was just beaming like a child at Christmas when I heard the governor's speech. I mean, he's worked so. Where's the governor's staff? I hope they're here. I want to raise your hand. I'm going to tell you, I have never in my life had the cooperation that we've had out of the governor's office and the Office of Planning and Budget. I appreciate where y'all. I know you're here. Thank y'all for the work y'all have done with us. And everything that we asked for, I want all our lobbyists out there and our support groups that work with us. We were a little skeptical at first, you know. We started this thing, but buddy, the governor's coming along. We were working as a team, and everything we asked for was in that budget. And the legislation we need is to help propel that along. So that's what we're going to do today. So with everybody's support, I would like to call on now the first piece of legislation, House Bill 186. And the reason we're not going to take this to a subcommittee is we spent weeks last year talking about this bill. It was one that Randy Nix did. It's not really 186 now, but it was 186 when we started. It has another number. But it was the career technical bill. So, Randy, if you'll come forward, and your number is what? It's 186. And the 713 is the bill, right. So it's 713, and it's an amendment to 186. All right, Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill we're looking at, 713, is pretty simple. When we passed 186 last year, one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to show the need to get this done as quickly as possible. And we put some pretty tight time restraints on the department to get them to show us that they were going to work on it. Well, they have done everything we have asked them to do to implement 186. And just a quick review, 186 was designed to emphasize career and technical education. We had a discussion about going back to 2 diplomas and all those sorts of things, but 186 was the final outcome. And obviously we did something right, because a lot of other people are beginning to want to do the same things, and they're talking about the same things in terms of workforce development. But 3 simple things that 713 does. We have agreed to roll those implementation dates back 1 year. The department asked us to do this. They said that there are a lot of things that need to be done, and rather than do them piecemeal and have different classes on different paths, they asked us to roll that back for 1 year so that they could roll it out together and do it right. So the main change there is you'll see the dates have changed for the implementation. The second thing they asked us to do, lines 20 through 23, was to actually provide for a K through 12 career education course, or a minimum prescribed course of study in career education. And they felt like that was important, and as we look at what's going on now in workforce development, I think that is a reasonable thing for us to consider to allow them to do. The third thing is that they ask us to give them the option of doing the assessment. Instead of doing it in the 10th grade, they will do it in the 11th grade. That's on line 74, lines 72, 73, and 74. And the reason for that was the math curriculum, and they felt like if they did it in the 10th grade, it would show deficiencies that were not real. It would just simply be because they had not had the math courses. And Mr. Chairman, those are the changes. It's relatively simple. I am in agreement with them. I must say that the department has worked very hard, done everything we asked them to do on this, and us giving them these considerations, I think, is very appropriate.
I'd like to say, if any of you have not had the opportunity to hear Superintendent Barges, we're the State Department people, I know they're out there. If you haven't had a chance to hear his presentation, please invite him down to your systems to do this, because they have taken the greatest piece of legislation, I'm convinced, what we've done in this committee in a long time, and he is fully implementing this, and it's really going to be a great thing, I think, for the young people of Georgia, and that 30% we were worried about. One reason he said to me, and Tom, I think Tom Wilson, that they're rolling out the Common Core curriculum this year too, and with all that work, you know, we're 49 states, I think, or 48 states are doing that, and they just didn't want to have too much going out. And Amy, you know, down there teaching, you know how tough that is, so that's why they wanted to give us that extra year. Now, do I have any questions? Anybody have a question? Raise your hand. I see number 10. I don't know who we are, so all right, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is not specific to the bill, but I'm hoping you could educate me. I'm trying to get my head around all of the different things that are happening. We've got the career pathways, the bridge bill, the soft skills. Could you help me understand, and maybe someone from the department, and Tom was in my office this week, and thank you, so I'm almost there. Describe for me a timeline and how these things are coming together. I went to a session that Mr. Everson did. They had these sessions across the state talking about soft skills. And so how does soft skills relate to this? You know, this 9th grade plan that came with the bridge bill. Are all schools going to come online at one point to do that? Help me understand where this is all coming together and the timeline for it.
Okay. I don't know that I can give you the specifics on it, but this bill is really the intersection of all the things that you're mentioning. That was one of the reasons we put specific dates in, because we didn't want it to be something that, well, we'll do it next year, and then we'll do it next year and do it next year. So that your timeline should be that when this is fully implemented, the things you're talking about should be fully implemented. Now, Tom may want to speak to that.
Well, I know in the bridge bill, it talked about having the students being counseled and consulted with, and having a cohort of students that teachers would work with, advising. That's in part of this bill. They'll be doing that, and that's one of the reasons for wanting to delay, to give them a chance to get that all organized. And then I do know the soft skills, Tom, am I correct? They're working with the Department of not
Workforce development.
workforce development, and that is they have been developed, and they'll just be part of all curriculum, all coursework. There won't be a specific course, but every teacher should be stressing showing up on time, completing your work, pride and quality of what you're doing, those soft skills.
Tom, did you want to?
Tom, you have any comments anymore?
Mr. Chairman, it's a lot of those regarding the soft skills, a lot of them will be embedded throughout the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to what a lot of schools do with character ed, where it's not just the character word of the day, but it's embedded in things that you do so students learn those traits of promptness, truthfulness, working as a team, and all those things that employers look for.
Okay.
That answer your question?
A little bit. But I'll keep asking.
I want to say to you, I would like for you to go and make an appointment with Superintendent Barge, and he can give and have his people. Tom will work with you. I'll instruct and give her and let him say and give you the timeline. They have them worked out.
Okay.
And I've
I
seen
will say, Mr. Chair, I think it might be helpful, and I'll ask the superintendent when I meet with him, if the department could prepare for us maybe a one-pager that describes, here are the 4 initiatives that are being rolled out at one time, and the timeline for those.
Well, he has that, and I've seen him present it several times. So that's when I said invite him to your areas,
Okay.
and so talk with
Well,
him.
he's been there, but I need to understand
well,
because it's so much stuff going on.
Well, I'm going to instruct Mr. Wilson if he would get with her and get her this information. Yes, sir.
If I could add, I think you all received an invitation. We're working with Dr. Bill Daggett,
Yeah.
who's from the International Center for School Reform, and we're doing seminars around the state. He's going to meet with the governor Thursday at 9 o'clock. That afternoon at Georgia Public Broadcast, Dr. Daggett's be doing a presentation, and what he's doing is tying everything in together, and I think you'll see how Common Core pathways, common assessments, college and career readiness, that's how he's working with us to bring it all together. And if you're able to attend that, I think you'll walk away saying, okay, now I see how all this.
Is that this coming Thursday?
It's the 19th.
19th. Okay. Yes. Anyone else? All right. It is a great presentation. I've heard it, and you've heard it, haven't you? It's a great presentation. It really ties it together. Anybody else have a question? Number 11. That's all right, Representative Dixon.
I just say when you're at the
You should be on.
appropriate time, I'll make a motion for it.
I'm ready. I think now is the appropriate time.
Move do pass for House Bill 713.
I have a motion. I have a second. All over the place. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed by the like sign. Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. The next piece of legislation we have, also as part. Now this is part of the Education Funding Committee, Finance Study Commission. We have, as I said, about 5 or 6 pieces of legislation that you'll be seeing, and this first one we're going to do is, let's see, Mr. Dudgeons, is 706 is the one on Title 20, right? All right. I have Representative Dudgeons will be carrying this, so this is 706, and he's done a lot of work on this one. So tell us about 706.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Education and Finance Study Commission, I'm bringing today House Bill 706, which is a Title 20 repeal and cleanup bill. Basically, the commission, as part of their charter, was to look at Title 20, look for areas that were obsolete, were unfunded, were not being used, and to look at parts of Title 20 that are not being used. And I mean, Betsy has a Title 20 book back there. It's enormous. Surely we can find parts of that that really are not needed or in the way. As part of this, we involve pretty much everyone. We've put out requests to the Georgia School Superintendent Association, the School Board Association, Department of Ed. Those old folks nominated, so to speak, areas of Title 20 to be looked at as far as areas that could be repealed or revised. We then held several meetings, including one with about 10 different superintendents from small schools and large systems around the state, and basically developed a consensus list. And the list you're seeing here today pretty much is a list that it has very broad consensus. We did not at this point try to tackle in this particular bill what I would call super controversial parts of Title 20. And so what I would like to do, because I think it's easier, because so much of the bill is repeal, and therefore the actual bill says repeal code section 20-2- whatever. I prepared this document, and if you see in your folders, it's got the spreadsheet with a black bar across the top. A lot of thanks also to James Touchton and the Senate research guys for helping produce this list in the Department of Ed. It actually references the sections in the bill, and some of the bill actually does have revised language, but like I said, most of it is cleanup. So what I would like to do, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, is go by these things one by one, and I would think it'd probably be easier if there's questions, people just make a note and ask at the end, or we could stop in between, Mr. Chairman, whatever you would like me to do. So,
Go through the bill quickly, let him go through it. Then if you have any questions, jot them down, and we'll go back and discuss them. And you also have a one-sheet for him, too, I think.
that's right. I got a one sheet and I got a detailed sheet, because I know that once we get, you know, this is so much going on here that I wanted to make it as simple as possible. And I'm going to go through the detailed
All right.
sheet, the spreadsheet here. All right, the first one, Section 1 and 2 of the bill deal with basically the allows the State Board of Education, basically we're undoing what I would call the Linda Shrenko legislation there. It gives more of the authority from back to the superintendent. Basically in the Shrenko days, basically laws are passed in order to let the state board step in and do things around personnel. So that we're repealing those sections. The Section 3 is around the location of state board meetings. Right now, the code actually mandates that is done in the city of Atlanta, and the state board, from very once in a while, time to time, wants to meet in some other place. Don't see why we need a law that says where they have to meet. I did check into this. Was a concern from one of the groups around the state board still is subject to Open Meetings and Open Records Act, which means that they're not going to go off and meet in some secret thing somewhere. They're still going to have to give public notice and so forth. So all it is giving them flexibility. If they have a special situation, they want to hold a meeting in another part of the state, they will be allowed to do so. Section 4 of the bill basically repeals a section which puts the state board in the educational television business. That was probably much more relevant, 20 years ago or whatever, but nowadays in the age of the internet and so forth, being in the TV business, that's actually from 1963, that section of the code. In fact, the Atlanta section was from 1953, so we're talking about a lot of old parts of the code here. Section 5 repeals language around the name of the local school superintendent, because it used to be called the county school commissioner. That's a 1919 era law, and we're striking that language. Section 6 is around oath of local school superintendents. This actually kind of bounced around a little bit. Of course, up until, I guess, 15, 20 years ago, superintendents were elected, and the oath language in the code was more reflective of an elected officer. And now superintendents are appointed. And sort of to clean that up, Betsy did a good job of finding an oath which still obliges the superintendent to do their duties, but doesn't actually contain language that's relevant for an elected officer. And you can see those there in the bill in lines 55 through 72. Section 7 is around who's eligible to enroll. Just language, it used to say other states, but now with enough people moving to Georgia, international sort of world, we have people moving from other countries, just clarifying this typographical thing that they're eligible to enroll as well. Section 8, we're getting into some of the repeal programs, and once we get into those, I want to sort of mention this. There are several programs we're going to get into here that we are repealing. The vast majority of these, well, all of them are essentially unfunded. So they're on the books. It says, the code says we're going to do X, Y, and Z, but we are not doing X, Y, and Z because the money is not being appropriated for that. Most of these are fairly old programs. You've heard the expression that government programs never go away. Well, hopefully today we'll at least have some of them go away. The goals of some of these programs are good, and I want to make this very clear. When we say we're eliminating a program, for example, the first one is around, what is it? Some of the summer opportunity program. We're not saying we don't like summer opportunity programs. We're not saying that schools shouldn't have one. What we're saying is this particular code section, this particular mandated program, is no longer funded from the state. Local boards are, of course, open to do whatever they would like in the summer, and most of them do stuff, and they tailor it very nicely for their groups. So anyway, so Section 8, again, there's a summer opportunity program from 1985. Some people have interpreted this as a mandate exactly how to do summer school, and this returns flexibility to the local boards as far as how they're going to do their summer program. Section 9 is around the date for an evaluation. The Georgia Code requires every teacher to be evaluated every year. As you know also, the contract date used to be April. It moved to May because of the budget situation. Local boards are waiting on us here to produce a budget, and they were trying to juggle what their personnel was going to be. With that moving back of the contract date, the thought was to move the performance evaluation date as well. When we got into this in detailed discussion with superintendents and with folks, it became clear that it would just, instead of trying us to guess a date right here, We just require it to be done every fiscal year and let the boards do the performance evaluation when they wanted to. So we're just striking the actual date. They still have to do the evaluation. Section 10 is around a insufficient supply of teacher, where we're going to give extra compensation with extra supplies of teachers. That actually is a fairly recent one. That's from 2007. That is not being funded right now, and also there is other mitigation. Let's say here, there's another piece of the code that covers that as well now. Section 11 is around the 5% salary guaranteed increase for teachers who have an increase in test scores. This was an idea to try to give a performance-based pay for teachers. I think there's a lot of the performance-based pay for teachers is a much bigger subject than we're talking about today, and I won't get into all of that. And of course, Race to Top is looking at teacher evaluations and things of that night right now. But this particular program is not funded. We're not giving 5% raises to teachers, so we wanted to get it off the books because it's not being done. Going to a couple more here. Career Ladder Program, that's from 1985 and 1991, talking about basically some teacher advancement opportunities where they move up the ladder and get some leadership training. The Department of Ed has other programs doing this, and we also have the Race to the Top looking at that as well. And again, there's no funding. Same thing, Georgia Leadership Academy. Again, that particular thing from 1985, not being done, obsolete, and Department of Ed and the local boards do plenty of leadership training on their own. Section 14, that's a paperwork bureaucracy thing, basically saying that every 3 years you had to send a staff development plan from a local board to the state. This is being done in other ways. These plans are probably being sent up there and not being read, and just getting rid of a paperwork that's not doing any good. Number 15 is another Shrenko situation, I believe. Yes, that's basically letting the state superintendent keep control of day-to-day operations instead of having it back with the board. Sections 16, and actually there's a related one in 37 about demonstration programs. Back in the 80s, there was no charter school, there was no IU Square, and so if you want to do something different, you had to have a demonstration program. Well, that whole language and that part of the code is now obsolete because we're doing those things through another mechanism. Section 17, that was one of my favorite ones to kind of chuckle at. It's from the 1985, talking about what education technology is. I don't think it's really very similar to what it was in 1985. And the other funny thing about this code, Section 2, is we read it and we're still not even sure what it was trying to do. So we're asking to delete it. Section 18, around achievement grants, allow the state board to provide awards to systems for achievements. Again, the state Department of Ed says a single statewide accountability section in a different part of the code allows them to do this as well. This particular thing's not funded, not being used. Section 19, authorize the state board to do educational research. Well, I think everybody's kind of doing research anyway, and everyone thought, why do we have to actually state that in the code? The only one thing that we're adding in this bill, and one reason it's basically a repeal bill. We wanted to minimize the number of bills, as everyone wants to do in this committee and in the legislature this year. We wanted to add a couple Title 20 cleanup things in. One of them is around REISs, basically just codifying in the law what we're dealing with already, which is the fact that a REIS is not a state agency, but it's a local unit, and that had an Attorney General opinion. We're just putting it in the law. Section 22 is something from 2003 and 4 about third grade CRCT assessments. There was a one-shot deal. We're just cleaning that up and getting rid of it. Section 23 is another TV situation. By the way, we did check. This does not in any way interfere with the Atlanta Public Schools' ability to do with their stuff with public broadcasting. It doesn't change that one bit. Section 24, a state program for middle school children after non-school hours. There's a federal program called the 21st Century Community Learning thing that has funds for this. At the state level, we've not funded for many, many years. Again, we're not saying that's not necessarily a good thing, but the state's not funding it. Local board wants to do it, that's great. And they use some federal money and come up and do one of those programs. 500, 501, 2, 3, I'm sorry, those code sections. Sections 25, 26, 27, and 28 of the bills are all from 1950s and 60s that basically technically say that the State Board of Education can control purchases at the local level of $100. That's never been, that authority has never been used. It's clearly silly to think that the state board needs to deal with $100 purchases at the local level, so we're getting rid of all that. Section 29, which is from 1919, basically says the Department of Ed is supposed to take a school census, kind of like we take a census with the United States. That language is really obsolete because we are with the QB 2 times a year FTE counts and so forth and computerized reporting and stuff. That's all done on an ongoing basis. There's no need for a census. Sections 30 through 33 around homeschool reporting. This was an important enough recommendation that the Education Finance Study Commission actually passed this recommendation on its own as a standalone recommendation. Basically, the idea is that right now every homeschool parent reports into their local board, a local school board office, about their attendance and about their intention to do the local board, to do a homeschool program. And the State Board of Education has generously offered to consolidate all of that so they can have a centralized mechanism of doing that homeschool reporting and declaration for the entire state. Most of that's being done online, of course, in the modern world. There's actually a lot of school systems that are going out. I know, for example, this creates a lot of paperwork and a lot of administrative costs for all the different school systems. And basically, the State Board, like I said, is being gracious enough to take that responsibility on. They will, again, keep the records and, of course, make those records back available to the local school systems and as far as their use in that area. I'm going to the last page there. Section 34 repeals the section around student code of conduct, saying that every year that local boards had to send their student code of conduct to the state board. What I found as a board member, we make minor tweaks once a year, use the state to the code of conduct. Again, a bunch of paperwork, a bunch of stuff coming to the state board that nobody was really doing anything with. Section 35 repeals the section allowing a child to pre-enroll their child at the age of 2. Not exactly sure what that was all about. It may have had a good reason, but it's not particularly being used. And again, a local system can pre-enroll or make a waiting list or whatever you want to call it whenever they want to, but we're not going to mandate it from the state. Section 36 from 1959 era 1959 era language basically is around basically sort of mandating a bonding situation for the principals, and we're just basically getting rid of the state mandate and kicking that back to the local level. At the 38 is the Education Partnership Grant. We are repealing that. There's local and community partner programs doing that right now, and from the state level we're not funding it. The very last one, which is interesting enough, kind of how I got roped into this whole rodeo here, is around Section 39, which is a prohibition on electronic communication devices in the classroom. This was done and ended back in 2003 in the age of beepers and cell phones only, and not a smartphone and nothing like an iPhone or an iPad. Technically, right now, it's illegal for one of those devices to be used in the classroom, even if it's for instructional purposes. In Forsyth County, my home county, we have Bring Your Own Technology periodically, where the teacher has a lesson that's online and the kids bring their technology, and if they don't have one, there's some to share. Allows them to use that, gets the kids very much engaged. It doesn't seem that we need to have a state rule that says that can't be done. Again, it doesn't mean, we're not saying this is wild, the Wild West, where we're saying that anybody can be sitting there playing with their iPhone during class. What we're saying is that the principal and the superintendent and the board at the local level can make their own policy around cell phones in the classroom. I don't know, my high school principal would have, thrown me outside to do work duty if I had brought my phone to class. So I trust those guys to make the right decisions about how we're going to actually use that technology, but it will allow us to move forward with that kind of policy. So that is a long list. I went through it very quickly because in effect of everybody's time. I will say one more thing is that this list has been vetted over and over and over again by various parties, not by this group. So I'm very looking forward to your questions, but it has gone through quite a bit of scrutiny before we got it to here.
James, stand up, James. You just came in.
Yeah.
James worked for the Senate with him, did research all over the country, what other systems are doing. I want Herb, G.A.E. Page, Georgia School Board. Yeah. I mean, we've had people involved, parents, just lots of people looking at this. And Christine, I want to recognize Christine. I'm going to tell you, she's been coordinating this Finance Study Commission. And introduce your assistant next to you, Christine.
This is Megan Marcus. She's the
budget policy worked with us, and we've had. I'm telling you, this committee has worked hard on this. Let me say, this is only about a third. Abby, where's Abby? Yeah, Abby's worked us. Yeah, Abby has been finding it too, Abby. And this is about a third of the laws. Is that right, Mike? Or about a fifth of the laws? What would you say? About a fifth?
Of the total.
Of the code. How many would you say? This is a fifth of them, or
no?
Betsy, what would you say?
It's It's a few percent probably, yeah.
It's thick. And let me tell you, we talk about heavy lifting. There's some stuff we really want that we'll be getting
That's
at
right.
next year looking at that we just felt like we needed to. This was our first shot.
That's right.
And we're going to really get in and look at some of the really tough things we need
That's
to
right.
eliminate later.
And-
You know, I want to encourage everybody to do something like this. This has really been an eye-opening.
That's right. And when I make that point, that the commission is going to consider this an ongoing process, and James is already spearheading an effort to get the next round of nominations, and the idea is that we make this a rolling process, that we try to back ourselves out of some of the stuff, because we're moving, as you guys, you know, if systems move to either to IA squared or charter, a lot of this stuff doesn't become relevant anyway.
That's right.
And so the state sort of top-down model, you know, has some valuable purposes at times. We're trying to unwind some of it that doesn't do us any good.
As he said, you know, by 215 they got to choose, and we're moving toward that flexibility. So
Yeah.
they're gonna waive it anyway.
That's right.
So let's just get rid of it. All right, any questions? I see a couple. All right, the first one, number one. If you raise your hand, where are you?
That's me over here.
All right, Randy.
Number one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question
Yes, sir.
on Section 10, talking about the salary bump for our science and math teachers.
Yes, sir.
We never implemented that. Is that what I understand? I remember I was here when we did that legislation, and we thought it was pretty important at the time
Yes, we did.
to give a higher.
We had a
pay,
teacher shortage in math and science, and we were.
That's right.
Christine, can you comment on that one? The math and science salaries. I know we never funded it. I don't think. And they paid it this year. Can you comment?
We are doing House Bill 280 that was passed, I believe, 2 sessions ago that does move beginning year teachers, those with less than 5 years of experience, up
That's right.
to the 6th step on the salary schedule.
So but we don't need this law to do that.
We are doing that already through House Bill 280.
So we don't need this. Yes.
As I recall, this particular section that he's talking about, the state board was annually to determine what kinds of teachers were in short supply.
Yes, short supply.
That's right.
And it didn't have anything to do with the.
Didn't have anything to do with the
Different bill.
math or science,
That's
right?
right.
So that's a separate thing, okay?
That's right.
Very
It
good.
wasn't, yeah, this one was any shortage that the state board would do, not the specific one from.
Not this so specific.
That's correct.
Very good.
So that is still in place.
Yes, that's still in place, the math, and it's in, yeah.
That's right.
180, yeah.
This was a more generic one.
All right.
Yep.
Number 2, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Actually,
Mr. Representative.
Representative Nix asked a question I need to ask. I do want to just simply commend you and comment on your last one dealing with communication devices. During my era, that would also be prohibited, as well as Chairman Dixon, but because simply they didn't allow pigeons to be brought into the school.
Oh, y'all keep those little. All right, anyone else have a question or comment? All right, since we have vetted this, and I'm not going to give the audience a chance, but let me tell you, they have spoken and spoken and spoken. So any more committee members? All right, do I have a motion? I have a motion. Do I have a second? All over the place. All in favor of moving this bill forward, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. I want to congratulate you. Unanimous, wonderful job. And James, I'm proud of y'all. Y'all did a great job, and I appreciate this. So don't leave. Come on back up and do your second bit. All right. Now we'll look at the House Bill 705. All
Mr.
right.
Chairman, I bring you again on behalf of the Education and Finance Study Commission, House Bill 705. I will not pretend to say this is not without a little bit of controversy. This is around the 65% rule. I'll go back and give some history. Back in 2006, General Assembly passed Senate Bill 390, which basically said that the goal was that 65% of expenditures of the local system would be for direct classroom instruction. That bill was implemented, like I said, back in 2007, after passing in 2006. What has happened since then is that the state board has gathered data on this and watched as things have gone by and looked at how this bill was actually performing. And they brought their information to the Finance Committee for a couple hearings. And basically the recommendation from the state board was that though there might be, and there is obviously a goal here about wanting to make sure that we're not wasting money in administration, this particular method of using 65% and that particular list of things to be used as a guideline in order to move money into the classroom was not working. And the state board did a white paper and a data analysis and showed that in a year since it's been implemented that there is no actual correlation between student achievement and the 65% rule. There's a waiver process where a lot of the systems are making it because they're making AYP or the other ways they could get out of that anyway. If you actually look at the list of systems that's not making 65% by the definition right now, it's a lot of your smaller, poorer systems. And one thing I will point out, which is relevant, this bill was passed in 2006 before the economy collapsed. And of course, with the freeze in QB funding and a lot of the cutbacks and the more austerity cuts, a lot of systems have had less money to deal with at the local level. And if you think about it, I'm a local system and I have my fixed overhead. I have my school building, I have my power bill, I have my janitor, I have my superintendent, I have this fixed overhead things. And as the money goes down, you can't really cut that overhead. And so unfortunately, you know, we've had a bigger class size and other responses to that thing. So it's actually made the number of 65% systems actually has gotten worse in some cases because of the lack of money at the local level. But the bottom line is that the commission looked at this very, very carefully and decided that that we do not have, again, like I said, a correlation. Let me find my right piece of paper here, Mr. Chairman. Give me a second. Another thing we'd look at was that there were several other states who were looking at doing this, and during that same time frame, nationally, was a sort of hot button issue. And when they looked at doing it, several states went down that road, but now Georgia is one of the only ones left sort of even working on this piece of legislation. I know Texas had it by executive order, and their legislature repealed it. I think there's a couple other states.
North Carolina had it, and they repealed it.
I'm going to go pick up another piece of paper on my desk before we answer questions because it's got some of that relevant data. But anyway, so that's kind of where we're at.
And this was the #1 requested waiver by school systems in the state of Georgia, too.
There is. And also to go to the languages, so now let's look at 705 and look at actual language. The commission, to be clear, recommended repealing it in its entirety. After the commission did that and met with some of the, with Chairman Coleman and some of the other folks in the legislature and looked at, is repeal actually the right way to go? And we decided that instead of doing that, what we're saying is we still just want to add some more things back into the formula. I don't think we want to send the message that we want to say, oh, we're repealing the idea of moving money in the classroom. What we want to say is there's more things that schools have to spend to educate that kid that is really directed on that kid and not wasted in administration. And so if you look at the bill, line 14, technology was included more or less anyway, but it wasn't in the code. We just wanted to clarify that technology used in the classroom is included. And as we know, we're moving more and more to using technology to help instruct those kids in the classroom. And then in line 16 and 17, we added in transportation, instructional support for media centers, and guidance counselors. Transportation is obviously the big thing there. That's a significant expense, especially for some of the smaller systems, as far as the percentage-wise, and where they have to bring the kids a long way. We talked about putting in cafeteria workers, food, but we looked at it and said, you know, most cafeteria programs at schools are more or less break even because there's a lot of federal money coming in for free and reduced lunch, so it really, from a budgeting point of view, doesn't really be significant. So we decided that this was the right language to move forward with the process, and so with that, I will. And
be sure they know we're not including the things you would call central office or administrative costs. That's the one thing people are not in that. All right, if we will, take questions. Number 15, who is that? Raise your hand. I don't have. All right. Hey, yes, sir. Representative Thomas. All right.
My paper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and Representative Nugent, I just wanted to commend y'all for being willing to sort of backpedal off of, you know, what was really a campaign bill, you know, rather than something people really believe was going to make a difference in the classroom when it passed. And I hope it's a lesson that, you know, our committee, who is filled with a lot of people that are very dedicated and care about education, that we don't let this become a vehicle for, you know, silliness in the future. So thank you for having the courage to change what you realize, you know, legitimately through research just isn't working.
Right. Thank you. All right. Number 18, who is, yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I do have a series of questions for the author. I was, as we've discussed, was here in 2006 and applauded the efforts that we moved towards the money we put in the classroom into kids goes to the classroom. I do get a lot of pushback from folks in the school districts that say, well, we put a lot of our school district money into the proposition. But when you consider that roughly 50% of all spending in the state comes from the state, and 50% roughly comes from locals.
That's right.
The state money, in my opinion, I think it was the opinion of the legislature, it was the opinion of Governor Perdue, ought to go down to those school districts with some expectation of how it's going to be spent. When we release 50% of all the funding we spend in education, it shouldn't be able to be spent at the discretion of even local school boards who are given very important responsibilities, but there should be some accountability there. I mean, it was touted in 2006 that the meaningful statistical impact of school districts that maintained over 65% expenditures, there was talk about SAT scores. And one thing I'd like to highlight, really, as I focus my questions around this to the author of the bill, there was the State Education Finance Study Commission put out an issue paper that talks about minimum direct classroom expenditures. And I think many who are familiar with the commission might have this. You probably have a copy as well.
Yeah, I do.
And I wanted to take what was ostensibly presented to support this, I think provides some of the most perhaps damning opposition to this. When you look at the numbers, if you look at chart 1 and 2 on page 3, and I'll explain to members who don't have this very briefly, but there are two charts that speak to the comparison of school districts that meet the 65% threshold and school systems that fail to meet the 65% threshold, and the number of systems that are above the state average on passing AYP. There's a bar chart that talks about above state average on the graduation rate, above state average on SAT scores, and then those that meet all expectations. While the pie charts show numerically similarity, when you look at the systems that don't meet 65%, 124 systems fail to meet 65%. 56 systems of 180 do meet 65%.
That's right.
On a percentage basis, 71% of the systems that meet 65% are above the state average on meeting AYP.
That's right.
Only 39% of those who are below 65% are above. That means if you're above 65% in your spending, you have an 82% higher chance of exceeding state average on passing AYP than schools that don't meet that systems. Likewise, for graduation rate, there's a 50% greater chance you'll exceed state average. In fact, for exceeding the state average on SAT scores, you have almost 250% increase in the likelihood you'll exceed the state average on SAT scores if you exceed 65% in the classroom. To me, these statistics are the most compelling argument for why we need to maintain the 65% standard in the state.
What's your question then? Because we are maintaining it. What's your question?
To the question, when you look at the way the bill is drafted, Mr. Chairman, I'll offer an amendment at the appropriate time. I recognize how important it is to include technology in classroom impact. I recognize guidance counselors and media centers are sort of integral to what happens inside the classroom. But I think when you add the costs for transportation in this proposition, if you look at the percentage of transportation costs, although it varies around the state, smaller, more compact districts versus more dispersed districts, I recognize that there's a differential there. I think when you add costs for transportation into the 65%, what you effectively do is you gut the meaning of what 65%
I disagree. If you can't get them there, my friend, you can't educate them.
I recognize that,
And
Mr. Chairman.
80% of the transportation money is spent by local systems, not by the state. Your money is not going there. It's going from the local systems, I think.
I recognize, Mr. Chairman, and I would only say, I'm not suggesting that...
I'm just asking,
I'm not suggesting that school buses aren't important. I'm not suggesting that school nurses aren't important. They're all very important.
Yeah.
And they're an important part of the 35% that we don't require to go to
ask your
class.
question. Ask your question.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask the members of the committee to consider at the appropriate time. I'm going to offer an amendment that would take costs for transportation out of this.
All right.
Because I think if you look at what the 65% means, we could have picked 70%, 60%, 50%, but the 65% was intended to mean a certain list, and when you add transportation in this, you've in essence gutted the meaning of the bill when we've got overwhelming statistical data that comes from the commission that confirms that.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify a little bit there.
All right, clarify, and then we have okay.
I would agree that your percentage is absolutely right, Representative Setzer. I agree completely. I don't know whether the correlation is a causation. I would say if you look, and I have a list I'll be glad to share with you later, which is every system in the state and their percentage on the 65 scale. And am I just looking at my knowledge of it? You know, again, I think a lot of the systems that struggle with the 65% are your smaller rural systems where just dividing the overhead by the number of kids is smaller. And those kids are not going to do as well as kids in my county, Forsyth, which has a 68% number. So I don't know if that's completely there, but you know, other than this one pie chart, I mean, I just want to tell you, this has not been something that was lightly done. I mean, the commission and the DOE looked at this, and their professional opinion is that there's no correlation. There's no 65% is not doing anything to drive student achievement. Though I understand what you're saying. I just want
and
to
isn't it true that? And is it true that of those you mentioned, Representative Setzler and Representative Dudgeon, that didn't make it? Probably, I can't remember, Tom, I think 50-something of those systems asked for a waiver, so they weren't trying to make it. You see what I'm saying? That 100-something.
Yeah, and in all practicality, this is not being enforced per se.
No, it's not, because they've asked for waivers.
The waiver process is taking care of this, so there's been no sanctions granted.
Weren't enforcement looking at it.
No sanctions granted.
And Mr. Chairman, I would simply close with one last, and I would say, I think what we're seeing is to be anticipated. That as soon as the impact of districts having to step up 2% per year start to be felt in a meaningful way, I think it was to be anticipated there'd be waiver requests, there'd be opposition to this. That's what we're seeing. That's why other states have repealed this, because of the complaints coming from districts. But I think we're starting to feel the potential impact of this, and unless we allow this to play itself out in a meaningful but uncomfortable way, we're not going to see the impact of this.
And you do know that once in 2015, when systems choose charter or whatever, they can waive all that anyway. They don't. Their money is there, spend it as they see fit. So that's in the law, and we've already passed that law. So, all right, we have the question. Any more questions? We have an amendment. We have an amendment on the table, and so what I'm going to do is allow you to offer your amendment. So, if you would at this time, Representative Setzler and Betsy, if you'll please get this down. If you'll offer your amendment, then we'll put it to a vote. Okay? Yes, sir. All right, you're on.
My amendment would simply be on line 16 and on line 19. Line 16, I would strike costs for transportation, comma.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, actually, we just need to strike the word transportation, comma, because that cost for applies to.
That's for all the others, just transportation. All right.
I'll restate that. I would propose to strike transportation, comma, on line 16 and strike transportation, comma, on line 19. I'm sorry, that should be unstricken. I apologize.
Unstricken on 19, all right? You hear the motion, the amendment, the motion. All right, we have the amendment. Please read it, Betsy. What would it do?
On line 16, we would remove the words transportation and the comma, and then at the end of line 19, we would unstrike transportation, comma.
All right, you see what it's doing. All right, do I have a motion, first of all?
Move.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. I have a motion second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All right, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor of striking transportation on line 6 so that it reads that in the 65% we do not include the transportation cost, and unstriking it, of course, on line 19, which would say the same thing. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand if you're in favor of that. I have 2. Okay, the vote is 2. All opposed, raise your hand, like sign. I think it's all right. The amendment is defeated. All right. Do I have any other discussion? If not, I hear a motion for the bill. I have a motion to move the bill forward. Do I hear a second? Second, all in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed? No. Okay. I have, please, if you're not against it, raise your hand. I have 1 against, the rest for it. Okay? So that's it. Any other thing? That's all the bills. You understand now what bills have been signed to committees. We will set up hearings. Ed, you have, how many bills did Ed? Ed had a couple signed his. I think Ed and Randy Nix are the only ones that had, you were here and you got your bills. If y'all will go ahead and schedule your hearings. And we probably will have another meeting next Thursday. Our meeting times will be 3 o'clock, so we look forward to having you all here. Thank you. No, I mean Thursday week, excuse me. Next Thursday week. Tom, do you have something?
Yeah, I'd like for the Pigeon Caucus to meet back there.
Pigeon Caucus. We want to thank everyone for coming and have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah.